Welcome back in, everybody, to Birds 365. I'm Xander Krause, sitting in for Jody Mack to close the show. John, first off, Merry Christmas, brother. Hope you had a good Christmas. I know you were on the
Yeah,
road.
Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Yeah, it was excellent, except I had to watch Tommy DeVito for
Yeah,
30 minutes. Boy, that was
that was a
rough.
struggle to
That was a
watch him.
that was a rough exercise. I feel for the Giants fans. I know Eagles fans don't, but I feel for them.
Yeah, it was a tough game to watch on Christmas away from the family. But John, I want to talk to you about your view from the inside on Nick Sirianni. There's a lot of social media talk, and that's all that is just social media talk, and people are going to do that no matter what. But I'm curious, what you're seeing from the inside at practice, inside the locker room last night. I know you saw a couple spats on the sideline, which I think are inevitable in the game of football with, men playing a physical sport. But does it feel like Nick is losing some of that locker room, or is that all
um,
yes, I guess you could say.
I haven't felt he's losing the locker room. I did yesterday though was a little bit, and specifically the Reddick thing. Um, you know, you can handle that better. He got asked about it, said he's emotional. All right, we know you're emotional, but you're the head coach. Sometimes you gotta reel that emotion in. I don't think it's fractured yet, but I mean, I think this whole team is wound too tight because of the expectations, and that stuff it doesn't, bode well because it seems like at least, and we don't know because and Nick will get asked about it again today. He's going to have his day after press conference, and I imagine he's going to handle it much the same way, keep everything inside, but certainly seemed like Devontae Smith was getting involved a little bit. AJ was certainly looking over, like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah, I saw
That
that.
type of thing. And again, he didn't talk to the media. He said it. His basic quote was, "If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all." So he didn't say anything at all. Um, I do think he's got to tone it down a little bit. Um, but Eagles fans love him for it. But they'll turn quickly. As you see in the three losses, people started to bring it up and spiking the football when things are going well, and that puts a target on your back that maybe doesn't need to be there. Why poke the bear, so to speak? Um, and the instance of getting too emotional on the sideline, you're also susceptible to making more mistakes if you're emotional rather than logical. So
Right.
that factors into it as well. But yeah, why are you yelling at Hassan Reddick and Jeremiah Washburn? I mean, yeah, we in the personal foul, as I said, if you're upset about that, you're upset about the legislation. It's a penalty, but you got to realize your players are going to get dinged for that occasionally. He's trying to make a play. He's trying to make a play.
Yeah, I wonder how much of this in-game decision making goes into it. Last night when you were on the Pond Hockey post game show, when you left, Seth had mentioned to the crew he wanted to ask you a question about when they're 4th and 1 or third, but at the goal line, and they opt to go away from the tush push when they're converting 98%. Is some of that going into it when you have AJ Brown looking at him like, what are you doing, dude? I wonder how much of that compounds when you have, these are talented guys. This isn't, these are Devontae Smith and AJ Brown are premier wide receivers. Jalen Hurts is a premier quarterback. I wonder if that plays into, him potentially losing the locker room. Every football team is going to lose games, but if you don't have confidence in the guy that's creating the offense you're running, eventually you're going to turn away from it.
Yeah, I don't think we're there yet, and hopefully we'll be able to figure out what was going on a little bit better in the coming week. But yeah, the offensive struggles a little bit strange to me because again, they were coming into the game. They were top 10 in most major offensive categories, and they piled up 465 yards. Um, you talk about the tush push touchdown. The problem with a lot of teams, and you've seen it over the past number of weeks, are really focused on trying to be that first team to stop it. And you're seeing a bunch of penalties. You're seeing guys jumping. The
Right.
Landon Dickerson has gotten caught. It's been called offsides a couple times. Um, they're trying to mix in some different things. You saw DeAndre Swift take a little bit of a outside run on one that was successful. So they're trying to mix in some different things to lighten up some of those looks they're getting. So I don't think it's 3rd and 1, it's 4th and 1 every time they're going to go to the tush push. They're going to use it a lot. And I don't think Devontae or AJ have any problem with that in that situation. I mean, Jalen Hurts just set an NFL record for rushing touchdowns by a quarterback. And most of those are tush pushes. Um, so I don't think anybody has a problem with it. AJ had 11 targets. I don't think getting the football was part of his angst. He's over 1,300 yards for the second consecutive season. He just set the Eagles record for receptions by a wide receiver in that game. Not a lot to complain about from that standpoint. Um, he will in games where he's not getting a ton of targets. We've seen him in the past get a little upset, but he had 11 targets. I think it's more to do with what was going on the sideline, which is, again, you're the head coach. Things are, the Giants are trying to make a desperation comeback, get down the field, minute and whatever, 15 seconds, no timeouts. They're going down. They get a big penalty. It helps them. Everything's like a fire drill on the sidelines. You got to be the calm one, Nick Sirianni, not screaming at everybody, playing into Sopranos. We got enough Sopranos bold, with Tommy DeVito. We don't need all the Italian hothead stereotypes coming into it. She's got to be more focused in those situations, I think.
Yeah, and on the flip side, what do you make of the starting quarterback, Jalen Hurts, right now? I mean, you saw the report from Jeff McClain earlier this week. He's that stoic, calm guy, opposite of what Sirianni is, with who's high on the emotional scale. Is there something to be said about his leadership in the locker room during times of adversity? Because I mean, I think he's a great leader. He's a guy that I would want to play for. But you did see that report. You did see a couple things. My uncle was here for Christmas, and he's like, I wish he was more rah rah. It's football. I wish he was
Yeah,
in
everybody
the
wants
game. So
everybody wants the
everybody
opposite.
wants
And
that, right?
yeah, when you
How
want
much
the
does that
rah-rah
play
guy.
into it?
Now then you like Nick Sirianni, right? But then when you see the emotional part of it, and we've joked over the years that Jalen's more mature than Nick, and it's supposed to be the opposite.
Right.
So what do you want? Do you want the emotional hothead, or do you want the cool, calm, and collected guy?
Well, I do think there's context there, right? Where emotional and rah rah from a quarterback is perhaps perceived differently than emotional and rah rah from a head coach of a football team who needs to make in game decisions, who needs to,
Yeah.
like you stated, be logical and rational.
Well, I prefer to have both logical and rational, if possible.
Yeah.
Um, I never heard anybody complain about Jalen Hurts' leadership style um, when they were, 10-1 this year or last year. Only when you lose 3 straight. So some of that's kind of baked in.
Right.
People just don't like losing. Very rare. Um, Losing streak for the Eagles, and now they've gotten. I always thought it was going to be baked in. They're going to beat the Giants. They're probably going to beat the Cardinals. They're going to beat the Giants again. They're going to win 13 games, and everything will be fine going into the playoffs. And then it becomes what you do and wherever your lot is, whether it's first seed, second seed, third seed. But I did bring up that quote from Jalen, about the standard and the expectations. That I think is wearing on him. And he said it, he said it's a very manipulative thing to the mind sometimes. I think that's very, um, Jalen doesn't give you much on the podium usually. And I thought that was eye opening. Um,
There's layers to that.
yeah. And he can play the standard and lose and be sick, or he can win, not play the standard and be a little bit happier. Bottom line is winning cures everything in this league. But the expectations that were placed on this team at the beginning of the season, and I've talked about it a lot, were unrealistic. And if you do, and the Eagles don't like to look ahead, but I can. If they end up with 13 wins and you're not happy with style points, I mean, what are we talking about? 13 wins. They had 14 last year. In the history of this franchise, this is only the third time they've won 11 straight in 2 consecutive seasons. Andy did it for 4. Dick Vermeil did it once, 2 consecutive seasons. That's it. Doesn't happen a lot, Xander.
Well, the context of that, John, is that part of the standard that they've set now is fans and the team alike are no longer infatuated with 13 or 14 wins. They want to parade on Broad Street. So if you can barely, squeak by the lowly New York Giants with Tommy DeVito.
Well, they were going to wax Tommy DeVito.
You went out, right, and you get the 2 seed, and you play the Rams. Matt Stafford is a competent quarterback.
He's more
does
than
that
competent.
spell trouble in round 1?
Well, Matthew Stafford can beat anybody if he brings his A game and the Rams are playing well. But I would still like the Eagles' chances at home. Certainly, the Rams are playing well. Everything's recency bias. They played well for a couple weeks. I mean, again, the Eagles have played well for 2 years. I think it's a much larger sample size. Just people have, Rams weren't expected to make the playoffs this year. And all of a sudden they're in a position to do so. So they're a great story. The Eagles are supposed to be where they are, arguably higher, above San Francisco, and they're not. So everything is dependent on an individual's expectations. But if they get the 13 wins, it's better than I thought they'd be. So it depends on, where, and if it's Super Bowl or bust, I mean, so many things. Tom Brady ruined a lot of people's scales.
Yeah, he might have ruined mine as well.
Because it ain't easy. And you can look, San Francisco looks like world beaters when everything's right. And then bang, Trent Williams gets hurt and they look like garbage. You get the wrong guy pulling the groin at the wrong time. Doesn't even have to be a major injury. So many stars have to align to win a Super Bowl. Last year's a perfect example. The Eagles outplayed Kansas City in that game, and they made a bunch of mistakes and lost the game. So many things have to go right, and it's not just luck, but luck plays a part. The other stuff is far more important. You got to be a really good team. But you also need some luck, and the assumption that, you're just going to waltz back into the Super Bowl. You probably heard me say numerous times, I'm stunned that so many, and not everybody, but so many don't realize that the Eagles had a hell of an accomplishment last season by making the Super Bowl, winning an NFC championship. That is really hard to do. And people are like,
All right. Yeah, I mean, I would say I think perhaps expectations are out of whack, not only internally but from the fan base, but from the outside looking in, something is off with this team. They're not playing great. You know, the leadership is off. The camaraderie is off. It doesn't feel like that unit, you know, across the board. And I think there's something to be said about that. Like I said, I'm not inside the room. I listen to all of JAKIB shows every day. I listen to your reports. I read your articles, you know, but from the outside looking in, there seems to be bigger problems with the Eagles, you know, outside of the great record that they have at 11-4. So
Oh
I don't know.
yeah, I mean they scapegoated a freaking defensive
Yeah.
coordinator who was, when they were 10-3. I can't give you another example of that. Um, that's stuff you do when you're 3-10. So they're reacting to those outside criticisms probably too much, to be honest. I mean, you got to double down and focus and just concentrate. They have flaws, but so does everybody else. I think you saw that over the weekend and Monday on Christmas Day with Kansas City and San Francisco. Everybody has flaws. Everybody, including the Eagles. So what I said, Darius Slay's coming back. Avonte Maddox is coming back. Nick Morrow's going to get healthy. Zach Cunningham's going to get healthy. They're not out for the season. That's a lot of help for the defense. If the defense can go from bottom 5 to middle of the road, the offense can still be a top 10 offense, top 5 in a lot of categories. Why not the Eagles?
There you go, guys. You heard it from John McMullen. Hold out hope. The stars can still align for this team, as bad as it might feel right now after squeaking by Tommy DeVito and the Giants. But John, good show today. Thank you for working hard on Christmas. I know sometimes that can be tough, especially when you're watching Tommy DeVito.
Tommy Cutlets.
Yeah,
Tommy
so
Cutlets got whacked finally.
you did. So enjoy your day off tomorrow. Birds 365 will be back on Thursday for the sole show for the rest of the week to preview JG week. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the show. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you guys on Thursday. And tune in next for the Power Hour with Bill Colorillo. Thanks, Johnny Mac.
Thanks, Ander.
All right, see you guys.